first day of Lent for Roman Catholics. Elon Campus Catholic Ministry is having an Ash Wednesday service at 9 p.m. at the Elon Community Church.
Pope Francis reaffirmed the Catholic Church's anti-gay marriage stance, but did leave the door open for civil unions. In a newspaper interview in the Italian daily newspaper Corriere della Sera, the Pope said civil unions provide financial security to cohabitating couples, like in the case of medical care. This isn't the first time Pope Francis has expressed his support for civil unions. He did so as Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 2010.
An appeal for a North Carolina constitutional amendment defining marriage as between a man and a woman, also known as Amendment 1, has a court date. The case on the controversial amendment will be heard in federal court on March 17th. A judge will decide whether the amendment is constitutional, not a jury. Today is Wednesday, March 5th. Good evening, I'm Sky Cowans.
And I'm John Bowden. The time is 6:01 p.m. and ELN Radio starts right now.
We begin tonight with news in Alamance County and around the state.
Both the Department of Justice and an attorney representing Alamance County Sheriff Terry Johnson are asking a federal judge for a ruling without a full trial. Johnson and his office are accused of racially profiling Latinos at traffic stops.
Attorney Chuck Kitchen wrote in the summary judgment request that complaints against Johnson are false and that some of the accused acts occurred more than 4 years before the filing of the lawsuit, thus violating the 4-year statute of limitations. The DOJ complaint claims the sheriff's office used racial slurs when describing imprisoned Latinos and that Johnson created a culture that encouraged Latino bias. Pending no summary judgment, the trial is set to start in July.
It started as a newspaper called the City County Weekly, and now 35 years later, it's being repossessed and ending publication. The paper split into the Alamance Magazine and the Alamance Woman, and they've printed their last issues for some time.
The magazines have been suspended by their publisher, CC Mag Incorporated. Chairman of CC Mag Inc., Paul Revegano, says he wants to examine what failed with the magazines and see if there's a possibility to save them in the future. There's one less place to buy yourself some cake in Burlington. The bakery Buy Me Cake has gone out of business. A post on the cake shop's Facebook page says all pans, decorating supplies, and materials are for sale.
While that Burlington business is leaving, another one is opening. The South Street Tavern will open on South Church Street in the old Jazabel's Jazz Bistro location. South Street Tavern was opened by Bill and Michael Breen and has a menu featuring Italian, Irish, and American cuisine.
4 Burlington restaurants are signed on to Hope's opening weekend. Hope stands for Helping Other People Eat and is a nonprofit program started by Elon sophomore Jensen Roll. If you eat at Mosca's Restaurant, Cork and Cow, Hersey's Barbecue, or Dottie's Diner this weekend, you will have the opportunity to donate $1 to allied churches. According to Roll, one donated dollar can provide up to 5 pounds of food for the food bank.
The Burlington Boys and Girls Club will be making a trip to Alumni Gym on Saturday to perform in Alpha Phi Alpha's annual Set It Off Stroll-Off.
Here with us to explain more is Danny Sellers. Danny, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us exactly what is strolling?
Yes, well, strolling is an activity that African American Greeks have been doing for years and years. It's a combination of stepping and dancing, and it's very fun for all people.
So what can Elon learn from this event?
Unity in Greek life, and not only just Greek life, but in student activities in general. We pride ourselves in having people from all the 3 different councils here at Elon come together on one night to have fun and enjoy themselves.
How did you get the Burlington Boys and Girls Club involved in the stroll-off?
Well, Alpha Phi Alpha, we always volunteer our time with kids in other communities, so we've in the past spent time with them, so they kind of just decided to bring them on board and have them to come join with us.
Great. So what is this raising money for?
Well, it's interesting because the PHC portion of the stroll-off, the teams will be able to compete, and whoever wins out of that competition will be able to donate to the philanthropy of their choice. So we'll be donating $250 to the philanthropy of their choice.
So who is invited to this event and who's performing? Can students go to it?
Students, family members, Elon community, everybody is more than welcome to come this Saturday.
Great. Thanks so much for being with us here, Danny. So Trader Joe's is a no-go in Greensboro. The popular grocery store is canceling plans to open a store in the Friendly Center in Greensboro after many businesses protested over proposed zoning law changes. In a statement, Trader Joe's spokesman Allison Mojuki said the store doesn't get in the middle of political battles, it just sells groceries. Those groceries will not be sold in Greensboro anytime soon. The closest Trader Joe's to Elon is in Chapel Hill.
Coming up next on ELN Radio, we'll break down the Russia-Ukraine situation and be joined by Elon Local News' chief foreign correspondent to help us understand what's going on in Crimea.
The time is 6:05 p.m. We'll be right back on 89.3 WSOE.
WSOE is proud to have Taza Indian Bistro as a sponsor, serving Indian cuisine for lunch buffet and dinner, located on 579 Huffman Mill Road in Burlington. Phoenix Cash is accepted. More information available at tazabistro.com. It's Taza Indian Bistro.
Hey y'all, you're listening to WSOE 89.3, the only alternative. I'm Jordan Lockhart, and my show is going to be good. It's a little pop, a little alternative, and a little country. With artists like John Mayer, Vampire Weekend, and Ben Rector, my show is perfect for when you're studying or hanging out with friends. Listen Mondays at 3 on WSOE. It's going to be good.
WSOE is sponsored by NC Jelly Donuts, serving donuts where you pick the filling. Located on 3260 South Church Street, NC Jelly Donuts.
Every Monday, give a listen to the Pendulum Pivot at 6 p.m. Start off your week with interesting news, good music, and great conversation as the pendulum swings with your host, DJ Valentine, on WSOE 89.3 Elon, Burlington.
WSOE is proud to have Dunkin' Donuts as a sponsor. Donuts and coffee all day long, located at 2526 South Church Street. More information at dunkindonuts.com. Dunkin' Donuts.
Join Nick Atz and Will Lee in the Jazz Corner for a relaxing, almost sensuous night of jazzy tones. Thursday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. From classic to modern, kick back and feel way classier than you really are. Here on WSOE 89.3, the only alternative.
WSOE is sponsored by Anna Maria's Pizzeria, serving pizza and Italian cuisine. Delivery is available at 336-449-4491. And Phoenix Cash is accepted. Anna Maria's Pizzeria.
You're listening to ELN Radio on 89.3 WSOE. Thanks for tuning in.
World leaders continue to react to the Russian invasion of Crimea. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk said he does not support any military action if diplomacy in Ukraine fails. Meanwhile, Secretary of State John Kerry is meeting with Russia's foreign minister in Paris today.
If Russia fails to comply, it faces possible sanctions like canceling the G8 summit in Sochi. But Russia doesn't seem too concerned about the possible sanctions. In a tit-for-tat move, Russian lawmakers are reportedly drafting a law that would allow Russia to confiscate assets belonging to U.S. and European companies if sanctions are slapped on Moscow. Today, the head of the European Commission, Jose Manuel Barroso, said the European Union is prepared to offer 15 billion euros to aid Ukraine. European Commission leaders will meet in Ukraine on Thursday. Here's Barroso.
We expect that recent measures to de-escalate the situation will be followed through. The situation in Crimea needs to be handled through political dialogue in the framework of the Ukrainian constitution and respecting the rights of all Ukrainian citizens and communities.
The Obama administration has been critical of Putin's actions and said that he is trying to annex Crimea. Putin blames Western powers like the United States for causing what he calls anarchy and an armed coup in Ukraine. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel criticized Russia's actions today in Washington and said it is time for the United States to stand with Ukraine.
That this is a time for wise and steady and firm leadership. And it's a time for all of us to stand with the Ukrainian people in support of their territorial integrity and their sovereignty. And we are doing that.
The United States, Britain, and Ukraine are calling for international observers to monitor Russia's military intervention in Ukraine's Crimea region. Russia has been warned by the U.S. and now European Union leaders that sanctions are possible. But for Congressman Paul Ryan, the diplomatic maneuvers from world leaders and President Obama are not enough.
I think when you have the world superpower having a foreign policy that, in my opinion, is weak, and a defense policy now that shows weakness, I think it invites aggression. I think that it creates a vacuum that is filled by these types of actions. But let's be really clear. Who is to blame for this? Vladimir Putin is to blame for this.
Here to help put this situation into perspective is Elon Local News' chief foreign correspondent, Elizabeth Cantliner. She's also an international studies major here at Elon. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
So, there's been a lot of talk recently about how likely an armed conflict in this region is. Some people say that it's inevitable. There's been pushes in Congress for an escalation of force in the region. How likely is an actual conflict in this region?
So the problem with what's going on right now, it's a lot of he said, she said kind of thing. So the Russians are saying, you know, we already have this agreement in Ukraine to have these forces in Crimea and that we aren't doing anything wrong. Whereas Ukraine and the United States are saying that Russia's overstepping their boundaries, that they're putting their troops there. So it's kind of escalating into somewhat of a Cold War kind of situation we used to see where Russia says one thing, the United States says another thing. So it's not really sure yet whether or not there will be an armed conflict because Ukraine cannot take on Russia. I mean, Ukraine, I think, looking at the numbers of soldiers they have versus the number of soldiers that Russia has, in no way could even hope to take on Russia. So to have some sort of armed conflict, they would have to have the support of the United States. They'd have to have the support of probably Great Britain. They're not a member of NATO, I don't believe, so they don't have to have, the NATO doesn't have to come to their aid. But the United States right now is very reluctant to get involved, boots on the ground, since Iraq and everything. So it's kind of going to depend on if the United States is willing to send troops over there. If the European Union is willing to do that, because without them, there's no chance, and they know that. Ukraine knows that.
Okay, now this region is primarily a Russian-speaking region. And there is a measure in Crimea's parliament right now to break ties with the Ukraine and join with Russia. If this measure fails, what will Russia's next move be?
So Russia could go very well into what they did with Georgia back in 2008. And in that case, as we saw with Georgia, they had a miniature kind of war with them that a lot of people don't realize happened because it was right in the middle of the Beijing Olympics, which is a very good move on Russia's part. Everyone was so focused on the Olympics, they weren't really paying attention with a country that a lot of people don't even know much about. And so they ended up annexing two parts of Georgia that are not considered legal. No one besides, I think, Russia and a few small countries considers these annexations legal. And so what they did was saying they were going in to protect the Russian people, put their peacekeeping, quote-unquote, troops in there, and never took them out. And that's exactly kind of what's starting to happen in the Ukraine. So Russia could very well go along that same path, and that's kind of what a lot of analysts are thinking right now because they're following a very distinct path, and it works for Russia. So they could go ahead, they could annex Crimea, they could not. We just kind of have to wait and see.
Okay. Now, a lot of people are comparing this to a very similar situation with what happened in Georgia in 2008 when Russia invaded that country. Do you think that's going to be a similar situation as what happens here?
So that's what I was just describing, what happened in Georgia. And so it's probably, it's a very similar pattern. So like I said, we're going to have to wait and see, but I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing kind of happened. But we'll all have to wait and see what happens.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us.
Up next on ELN Radio, we'll introduce you to the spring concert artists and bring you the latest in music news.
And it's a big weekend for sports. Later in the show, we'll be joined by ELN sports reporter Andrew Feather, who will break down what we need to know. The time is 6:14 p.m. We'll be right back on WSOE 89.3.
Sponsor of WSOE. Water coolers and water available for homes, businesses, and students. Serving Elon for 20 years, 5 Springs bottled water can be reached at 336-584-8822. 5 Springs bottled water.
Boy, do I wish I had a great radio show to listen to from 6 to 7 p.m. on Saturdays.
Fear no more. You can listen to the best hour of the day on WSOE 89.3, the only alternative.
What will curb my interest?
Anything ranging from MC Hammer to Jack Johnson.
Oh, it's like my prayers have been answered.
Well, good. Turn into our show, the best hour of the day, with DJ Griffey Griff
and Kyle the Funk Master. See you then.
Lock Management is a proud sponsor of WSOE. Managing models and artists out of Greensboro, Lock Management is looking for new faces and talents in the Elon area. More information at lockmanagement.com. Lock Management.
Tune in for Blue Sky Lightning, one of WSOE's longest-running broadcasts. With 3.5 years of experience under my belt, you know it's going to be a good time. So, if you haven't tuned in before, make sure you tune in this semester, because we're going to be having a lot of fun. Blue Sky Lightning airs every Monday from 5 to 6, right here at WSOE 89.3, the only alternative. Hooray for Monday.
WSOE is sponsored by Sminnie's Homemade Ice Cream, the official homemade ice cream of the Elon Phoenix for 9 years, located on 130 North Williamson Avenue in downtown Elon. Smitty's Homemade Ice Cream.
Fire Salon and Spa is a sponsor of WSOE. They provide haircuts, hair treatments, and massages. Fire Salon is located at 3156 Walden Lane at Alamance Crossing. More information can be found at firesalon.com. Fire Salon and Spa.
Welcome back to ELN Radio on 89.3 WSOE.
A common complaint about the Student Union Board's annual spring show is that students have no idea who the artists are. Now, this year sub-selected the Chainsmokers to open for hip-hop artist B.O.B. If you don't know who these are, our Joe Bruno has you covered.
You are listening to #Selfie, the top-played song by the Chainsmokers on Spotify. The Chainsmokers are an EDM duo from New York featuring Andrew Taggart and Alex Paul. They've been featured on Tiestro and Afrojack's podcast, and their song #Selfie reached number 38 on the U.S. Billboard Top Songs chart.
Where's Cheetah? It's not even summer. Why is the DJ keep on playing Summertime Sadness? After you're in the bathroom, can we go smoke a cigarette? I really need one. But first, let me take a selfie.
Bobby Ray Simmons Jr., otherwise known as B.O.B., will also be performing. The song currently playing is called Headband, which has sold more than 1 million copies in the United States as of last month, and reached number 16 on the U.S. Billboard Rap Songs chart. This song, Nothing on You, featuring Bruno Mars, won the Best Song Award by the Soul Train Awards, and ended 2010 as the 18th most popular pop song on the Billboard charts.
Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? I could really use a wish right now.
Finally, his song Airplanes, featuring Hayley Williams of Paramore, won the Best Hookup Song from the Teen Choice Awards. Airplanes reached as high as the number 2 song on the Billboard Top 10 song charts, but reached number 1 in Israel, the Czech Republic, Scotland, and the United Kingdom. Joe Bruno, Elon Local News.
Tuesday is a big day every week for music. It's the day when new albums and singles are commonly released. Gary Grumbach has some new songs you might not have heard of yet.
Tuesday was a day for new music featuring an album from Pharrell Williams. The song you are listening to is called Brand New, and it features Justin Timberlake. British rock band Coldplay released its first single since Atlas from the Catching Fire soundtrack. The group's new song is called Magic and was dropped out of the blue, with an album coming in May. Glee star Leah Michele released her first album called Louder. The first song on her album is called Cannonball, and it was co-written by Sia. It is an empowering pop song about challenging obstacles with a groovy chorus. Janelle Monáe released a new song called What Is Love? What Is Love is from the soundtrack of Rio 2. The song was inspired by Brazil's Carnaval and is some island funk. The Electric Lady is featured on the soundtrack that includes Bruno Mars and B.O.B. She is performing the song on American Idol on March 27th. With the latest in music, I'm Gary Grumbach, Elon Local News.
Social change happens at every level, including music. I sat down with one Elon professor who expresses his views through his music. James Brown.
When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that I was gay. Cause I
Macklemore.
my uncle was and I kept my room.
And Pussy Riot. For generations, musicians have used their music to preach their politics to their audiences. These artists come from all over the world, but you can find one of them right here in the recording studios in Elon's Performing Arts Center.
It is a language without actually speaking words, and the result of that is it affects your emotions.
Jim Roberts is an adjunct music professor at Elon, but when he's not teaching students, he plays drums for the band Crackdown, whose songs are aimed at North Carolina's Republican-held legislature.
That band even still has a good time, but is able to have a message.
Take my word. Roberts says he's inspired by artists like James Brown. Known as the Godfather of Soul, Brown used his music in the days after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination to rally the spirits of the African American community.
He was a game changer.
Brown's hit Say It Loud is one of his most well-known and embraced the idea that being black in America wasn't something to be ashamed of.
The music made an enormous difference in the lives of African Americans at that time, and I was certainly attracted to it.
Brown's legacy lives on today as artists like Roberts follow in his footsteps. John Bowden, Elon Local News.
You could say Associate Professor in the School of Communications Dr. Naima Clark is familiar with James Brown. Dr. Clark authored a chapter on Brown in a recently published book titled African Americans in the History of Mass Communication. Dr. Clark's penned a chapter on the power of Soul Brother Number 1, James Brown's crusade for social change. We spoke to Dr. Clark about Brown's legacy.
Overall, I think his legacy is musical, wildly energetic music, and then there's some negative stuff about the abuse and of his wives and the drunk driving arrests and the fighting and the shootings. But then there's this other part of him that I just thought was fascinating about advocacy.
You heard right. I'm Wilson Jacobs, and I'll be your tour guide every Wednesday, 3 to 4 p.m. at my station, Jurassic Park. That means the best hip-hop, the best R&B, the best. And remember, this is your ticket in, so don't forget to tune in Wednesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. I'm Wilson Jacobs, signing off on WSOE 89.3, the only alternative.
Elon Local News and WSOE have teamed up to bring you the news you need to know.
Tune into ELN Radio Wednesdays 6 p.m. for all that's happening in Elon news, entertainment, and sports.
ELN Radio, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on WSOE 89.3.
Been wondering how what's-her-name has been? Then tune in Saturdays from 10 to midnight with Allison and Maddie and get your party started with the What's-Her-Names on WSOE.
In a world where the masses can't find good music on the radio, one radio show goes against all the odds.
Get on the microphone in a serious manner.
Bringing you all the action. Drama.
Shut up! Shut up!
Romance.
You complete me.
And music that you crave.
I'm talking about bands that rock.
You're looking for, that's Moderately Raven on WSOE 89.3 every Saturday from noon to 1 with me, Mac White.
Yeah, Mr. White.
That's Moderately Raven. It's the radio show that you've been craving.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Welcome back to ELN Radio. Here's your sports update. The softball team is currently taking on the Presbyterian Blue Hose in Hunt Softball Park. Elon is winning 4-2 in the 6th inning.
The softball team will have a doubleheader on Saturday against the Radford Highlanders. The first game is in Hunt Softball Park at 1 p.m. Also on Saturday is the men and women's Southern Conference basketball tournament.
The women will play their first game at UNC Asheville against the 4th-ranked Appalachian State Mountaineers at 2:15, while the men will open play with the 5th-ranked Western Carolina Catamounts in the U.S. Cellular Center at 2:30. ELN sports reporter Andrew Feather is in the studio to give us a preview of the tournament. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what is the path for both the men and the women to the NCAA tournament?
Okay, well, for both of the teams to win the tournament, or to make it into the tournament this time, they're going to need to win at SoCon. Elon will have to make it through Davidson, who's won 2 straight tournaments, and the women will have to beat Chattanooga at some point if they don't lose, who are 18-0 in the conference. So right now, it's looking very unlikely.
Okay, great. Thanks for being with us here. Okay, Elon basketball stars Lucas Troutman and Sebastian Koch are being recognized with one of the conference's top honors, the All-SoCon team. Lucas Troutman made the All-Conference first team in both the media and coaches polls. Sebastian Koch made the All-Conference third team in the media poll. We caught up with Koch after he found out the news.
It's nice, definitely, especially being in the same category as some other great players in the conference is an honor. And being able to share that with Lucas, he's in the first team, so I think that's a nice little accomplishment.
Troutman and Koch are both seniors, so this weekend will be their last time wearing a Phoenix uniform. Riley Beaumont, Jack Eisenbarger, and Iwagosa Idambwami round out the 5 seniors and complete Mathany's first recruiting class. Together they are preparing to fight one last time. Here's Riley Beaumont and Lucas Troutman.
Core of seniors that we have, all 5 of us, I mean, it's something that's special that I don't think a lot of guys have a chance to really be a part of, and we appreciate every day in practice and games, and we're ready to suit up and battle with each other one more time.
I couldn't have it any other way. I mean, these guys I've bonded with are amazing guys, and they're brothers to me, and they always will be. And I'm honored to be out there playing with them.
If the men win on Saturday, they will play on Sunday at 6 p.m. If the women win on Saturday, they will play on Sunday at 12 p.m. All men's games are on ESPN3, while all women's games are streamed on SoCon Sports TV. Meanwhile, on campus, there are 2 games on Sunday. The men's tennis team will take on Davidson at the Jimmy Powell Tennis Center at 1, and the softball squad will close out a series with Radford at 2.
And that's all we have for you on this week's ELN Radio on 89.3 WSOE, but we've got a busy week up ahead. Like Andrew said, this weekend is the SoCon tournament, and Tuesday, March 11th is Elon Day. ELN Morning will be broadcasting live from College Coffee as Elon celebrates its 125th anniversary.
Now be sure to check out elonlocalnews.com throughout the weekend for our updates and from our reporters in Asheville, and tune into our regular ELN broadcast Monday at 6 p.m. on Channel 5 for the news you need to know from the bubble and beyond. And don't forget to check out our Twitter and Facebook as well. I'm John Bowden.
And I'm Sky Cowans. Have a great week, Elon.